it is that time of the year again where the 2024 RMB Latitudes Art Fair is back. This year shines a spotlight on the greatest visual artists of all time, Geoffrey, Armstrong and Wendy Vincent. The culmination of Armstrong and Vincent's lifelong passion for the natural world delves into the intricate relationships between earth, air, water and fire. So through a wide range of media, including painting and sculpture, installation and photography, we're going to find out a little bit more. For this, we are joined by RMB Art Fair manager Nina Carew and one of the curators for this year's Art Fair, Lebo Kekana. Nina and Lebo, good morning to the both of you, and thank you for joining us on the SABC at this hour.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Nina, let me start with you. Perhaps we could look at the decision, the inspiration behind Geoffrey Armstrong as well as Wendy Vincent this year. Talk to what went into that decision.
So the two of the Armstrongs are part of one of RMB Latitudes special projects, which is called SA, and this is a featured exhibition that is focused on a range of talent that has either been from an emerging space or an established space to give artists a platform to showcase. So
how would you say it merges with the theme of this year for 2024?
So Lebo can speak more to the theme of this year, and then we can look really at the Armstrongs. But we were just so excited to have them join us in the special project. So yeah, we can discuss.
Yeah, Lebo, perhaps you want to jump in. Good morning. Thanks for also joining us. It took us about, that just shining a spotlight on those two curators of our greatest artists of all time, how it ties into this year's theme.
I suppose what we're trying to do this year is look at the relationship of what is typically the gallery space and just Africa in its essence and creative expression in Africa. So trying to really draw from what we can think of as the fundamentals of creative expression in Africa, whether that's kind of creating objects that are used in moments of gathering, in ritual, through celebration. So I mean, earlier you spoke to a few mediums around painting and photography, but the art fair is actually a lot more kind of expansive than that. We're trying to really create a really engaging experience through music, through performance, and I think to speak to the Armstrongs, their work really kind of speaks to a sense of imagination, but also thinking about how we engage with the natural world, which extends to the fair as well. I mean, you've got the expansive landscape, the incredible architecture, there's kind of like a dialogue between the natural world, how we engage with it, and then in the center of that, you've got this incredible artwork to engage with.
Well, speaking of which, this year's programming, I mean, talk a little bit more about that on the back of what Lebo was just echoed.
So this year's programming is phenomenal. We've got across RMB Latitudes has a series of walkabouts that hosted every day. We've got a huge sculptural focus this year. So there are outdoor sculpture walkabouts. There are further live programming, which Lebo has curated. And there's wonderful talks, so we can go a little bit more into the talks as well. So there's something for all this year. It's really a space to deepen your knowledge as well as experience something amazing in this indoor-outdoor
space.
The
talks, the art installation, the design, what went into that? What goes into that experience that's an offer this time around?
I suppose, I think after having experienced the fair last year, I was just very captivated by the space itself, just the architecture, the gardens. It's really kind of whimsical, you might say. So we wanted to kind of drive that through, to kind of have it be this kind of otherworldly experience that takes you outside of reality, even though it reflects it. And within that, we're trying to think of it as a prerequisite for imagination, for innovation, in thinking about where we want to take African art as an ecosystem. So within the talks program, I think we're trying to really cultivate critical engagement. So to really think about our understanding of arts from Africa. I mean, some of the conversation speaks to sculpture. I mean, there's like a long history of sculpture within this region. There's like, I think the oldest record of sculpture within sub-Saharan Africa was discovered about 15 centuries ago in what is now known as Mpumalanga. So we're trying to place contemporary sculptural practice within that history so that people understand that there's just like this long evolution of sculpture. And then in terms of just looking at the space, we're using the white cube as a motif to reinstate its position as a platforming mechanism and not as kind of like a domineering set of rules, which it tends to be because we've adopted this framework from the West.
Yes.
So we're trying to use it as a platform for African expression, or I guess just expression from this context, drawing from how everyday South Africans kind of engage with artistic expression, to let that inform how the space operates, the rules of engagement in the space, how well the space holds people. I often think that's why everyday South Africans aren't maybe so accustomed to engaging with the formal spaces of the arts world, because just in their makeup, they're kind of referencing 20th century Western modernism.
Sure.
So with that in mind, we need to think of how that universal technology, so to speak, draws from our context so that it can serve our context.
Absolutely, and restore agency at large.
Exactly.
Perhaps you could also look at that evolution to date, and what are you witnessing? Are you proud? Is it gaining? Are we gaining enough momentum? How else do we complete the world story with our vision?
I will say it feels like there's a huge interest in just forms of expression from Africa at the moment.
Yes.
We see it in music, we see it in dance, which has been inherent for years but is now being put on kind of like a world stage. And I do think, I mean, the conversation was starting with arts, but it extends to thinking about architecture, to thinking about how we just make up the world in general. And I think largely because of ecological concerns, there's now an interest in kind of ideologies which are African, because there's always been kind of like a harmonious relationship with the natural world. And I think because of that, people all over the world are kind of, there's an interest in Africa. So there's a wanting to find newness in the ways in which, I guess, tradition has done things. However, it's important to not just simply copy things from centuries past, but to innovate, to define tradition in a new way, to kind of contribute to how modernity is defined based on this context.
No, absolutely. That's a thesis loading. I have so many more questions. But Nina, we're running out of time. Looking at when it's happening, times, etc., accessing. Talk us through what's on offer on that front.
Yes, so the fair runs from the 24th to the 26th of May. So it's next week, Friday through to Sunday. It's hosted at Shepstone Gardens. So it's a 3-acre property. It's indoor-outdoor fair experience. And tickets are on sale on Quicket. So the Saturday has already sold out, which is wonderful. But please make sure you get your tickets for Friday and Sunday. It's also available for families. Children have access. We have a wonderful set of, a guide across the property for them. And this year's really, and RMB Latitudes is very focused on accessibility. So also to further what Lebo was saying, we work with independent artists, we work with galleries in new ways that sort of break barriers from historical ways of access points, and also really growing budding collectors as well as seasoned collectors. So there's space for all, and we welcome you all.
I wonder what some of the feedback has been from previous, Latitude art fairs, just because art is a form of healing as well, right? It's a conversation starter to have you reflected back to yourself and hopefully learn as well. Over the years, what have you heard? What's also been evoked for both of you?
I think one of the artists who showed in the fair last year and is showing again this year, she's part of Kuti Collective. She described it as kind of coming to a giant playground with your family to experience art. That's exactly what it is. I think because of the beautiful gardens, it's kind of like a multifaceted experience in itself. People have used words like magical just because of the experience it cultivates, which I think for me has always been interesting about this fair, because it kind of breaks the mold of a typical art fair of kind of like the white walls everywhere, and it's just a really fun space, honestly. I mean, there's incredible art, but it's you can kind of get lost in it, which is really, really beautiful, I think.
And for you, Nina?
I think we found that that the public really responded so well to this sort of magical space that was a bit of an escape from maybe what is your everyday, and the struggles that all South Africans face, to be able to come and have this opportunity to sort of get lost and explore and have a space of curiosity at any age. Really people had a newfound hope for Joburg. That was some what we heard from last year. So
and we're edging closer to elections.
Yes.
So I mean, this space is definitely needed. We need a whimsical, magical space. Thank you to the both of you for joining us, for starting that conversation. We're wishing you all the best of luck, and we'll see you in just a few days' time. Of course, RMB Art Fair manager Nina Carew and one of the curators for this year's Art Fair, Lebo Kekana, talking to us about the festival, as they, of course, pay tribute to both Geoffrey, Armstrong and Wendy Vincent.